in the United States, and Donald Trump has announced he is going to double the tariffs imposed on Canadian steel and aluminium.
Governor of Ontario on the weekend saying that he would impose tariffs on electricity coming into the United States. And so Donald Trump, in response, has issued this extremely lengthy tweet, or 50% on steel and aluminium. He seems to be taking no notice of the turmoil in the markets, which have lost all of their gains.
Trump just threatened to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, and new PM Mark Carney's response left Trump absolutely fuming. But here's what no one's talking about. These tariffs could cost American families thousands of dollars. In the next 5 minutes, I'll break down exactly how Trump's trade tantrum could backfire spectacularly, why Carney's calm response might be genius, and the real reason Trump seems obsessed with turning Canada into the 51st state.
Yesterday marked the latest in President Trump's unprecedented series of U.S. tariffs that are designed to reshape the international trading system. We received confirmation that the latest reciprocal tariffs will not be imposed on Canada. The ambition of these measures is enormous. The effects on the global economy will be monumental.
The economic numbers don't lie, and they spell disaster for Donnie Diapers. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Let's dive into the real-world impacts of Trump's tariff tantrums. When he slapped tariffs on Canada back in 2018, American companies got stuck with a $900 million bill in just 1 month. And guess who ultimately paid for that? Not Trump, not the companies. It was everyday Americans who saw those costs sneak into the prices of their daily purchases.
You see the numbers. The numbers are so disproportionate. They're so unfair. At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. You notice that on the chart. And that'll be on other countries to help
Millions of Canadians. We're going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures.
Subsidize a lot of countries and keep them going and keep them in business. In the case of Mexico, it's $300 billion a year. In the case of Canada, it's close to $200 billion a year.
We are going to protect our workers, and we are going to build the strongest economy in the G7.
That's the tariff game for you. Politicians pretend they're punishing other countries, but they're actually taxing their own citizens without calling it a tax. Meanwhile, Mark Carney isn't just sitting back and taking Trump's threats. He's playing chess while Trump plays checkers. Carney has established a strategic response fund specifically designed to counter U.S. tariffs. The brilliant part? This fund strategically targets states that support Trump. Talk about a political masterstroke. Carney's protecting Canadian interests while potentially influencing Trump's base right where it hurts their wallets. The economic fallout from Trump's trade tirades is already showing up in the data. The Conference Board reports that U.S. consumer confidence took a nosedive in March, dropping 7.2 points to 92.9, the lowest since January 2021. When consumers don't feel confident, they don't spend. When they don't spend, the economy suffers. It's Economics 101.
At the same time, President Trump confirmed that the tariffs announced last week against our auto industry will come in, and indeed have come into effect today. Three different sets of U.S. tariffs remain in place and will continue to pose significant threats to Canadian workers and Canadian businesses. So while it's progress that further tariffs were not imposed on Canada yesterday, the President's actions will reverberate here in Canada and across the world.
Something Trump apparently skipped during his Wharton days. And if you think it's just numbers on a spreadsheet, think again. Ontario Premier Doug Ford put it bluntly when he warned that car plants on both sides of the border could shut down simultaneously if these tariffs go through. The auto industry doesn't recognize borders the way Trump seems to think it does. Parts cross back and forth multiple times before a vehicle is completed. Slap tariffs on that process, and you've thrown a wrench into an entire industrial ecosystem. Trump's response to all this? More threats and bizarre statements. He's now accusing Canada of using electricity as a bargaining chip and threat. He even declared that Canada will pay a financial price for this so big that it will be read about in history books for many years to come. Typical Trump, when faced with facts, respond with fantasy and fury.
Have been imposed under different premises, some things are consistent. They are all unjustified, unwarranted, and in our judgment, misguided. That's 3,600 workers who are now out of work, not by their choice. Workers who now worry how they're going to put food on the table and pay their bills. Just last evening, workers from Unifor Local 444, with whom I met last week, learned that their auto assembly plant in Windsor will be shutting down for at least the next 2 weeks.
But his most bizarre fixation might be his repeated suggestions that Canada should become part of the United States. I'm sure Canadians are thrilled at the prospect of giving up their healthcare system and adopting the American model. Nothing says, join us, like threatening a country and then inviting them to become your 51st state. It's like punching someone in the face and then asking them out for dinner. The real irony in all this is that Trump claims to be the champion of the American worker while pushing policies that directly threaten American jobs. The manufacturing and auto industries rely heavily on Canadian materials and components. When you disrupt that supply chain, you're not just hurting Canadian businesses, you're putting American jobs at risk. But Trump's never been one to let reality get in the way of a good rally chant. What's particularly troubling about this whole trade tantrum is how unnecessary it is. Canada and the US have one of the most successful trading relationships in world history. Millions of jobs on both sides of the border depend on this relationship continuing smoothly. Trump throwing a wrench into this well-oiled machine isn't just bad policy, it's economic sabotage against his own country. While his supporters might cheer the tough talk, they'll be less enthusiastic when they're paying more for cars, appliances, and countless other products that contain Canadian materials. They might also be less pleased when their jobs disappear because their companies can't afford the increased costs or find alternative suppliers quickly enough. Grumpy Trumpy seems to think trade wars are easy to win, but history consistently shows otherwise. They typically result in economic pain for everyone involved, with ordinary citizens bearing the brunt of the damage. When two deeply integrated economies like the US and Canada engage in a trade war, it's like two neighbors deciding to solve a dispute by setting fire to both their houses. Meanwhile, Carney continues to respond with measured, strategic moves rather than emotional outbursts. While Trump fumes and threatens, Carney is actually developing plans that protect Canadian interests while minimizing harm to both economies. It's the difference between a tantrum and a strategy, between a reaction and a response. So here's the real kicker. The longer Trump keeps pushing his trade temper tantrum, the more American wallets are feeling the pinch. The Conference Board's U.S. Consumer Confidence Index has tanked for the 4th month straight, hitting its lowest point in years. Coincidence? I think not. While Donnie Diapers is busy threatening to slap tariffs on everything with a maple leaf, Carney's over here playing economic chess instead of Twitter checkers. The 51st state nonsense is just another distraction from the real question Americans should be asking. Can your bank account survive another 4 years of Trump's economic meltdowns and trade tantrums? The answer is looking like a big fat no.